Hey everyone, I'm Zenith Priest, and welcome to my introduction of Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares, where I will give you insight into the nature of this spirit and show you how to drive off the invaders by turn 5. Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares is a high complexity fear spirit, but it has a noticeable lack of offensive capabilities. Indeed, Bringer has a capacity for even more fear generation than your average spirit, at a cost of not being able to permanently remove invaders outside of enlisting the Dahan. To dream 1,000 deaths shows us why that is, by instilling such terror that any invaders not entrenched in a city will relocate elsewhere on the island. However, Bringer cannot damage or destroy invaders, instead generating extra fear when a building would be destroyed, and pushes any non-cities destroyed in this manner. Bringer has 4 growth options to choose from: a standard reclaim option while gaining a power card, 2 different options for extending your hand, either by gaining a power card or reclaiming a single power. Depending on which one you choose, your range will be limited for placing presents. Lastly, an option to place presents at extended range and gain some energy. Bringer has a decent start, both with energy and card plays. Taking presents from the top track offers an array of elements and energy gain, while the bottom track is fairly static, only granting an extra play after 3 commitments. The strategy I'm presenting here will focus on placing presents off the top track and getting to major powers fairly quickly. While there is a valid strategy for following from the bottom track, I feel that's a bit more advanced for a basic introduction, but I'll be looking to highlight that in a future video. Bringer's first innate power, Spirits May Yet Dream, grants us a peek at an upcoming fear card. This can be really useful in allocating our resources, knowing what would be taken care of without our intervention. This power also grants an extra element if you get to 3 Moon, potentially hitting a major threshold if you've already got one of the needed element. Night Terrors can generate up to 3 Fear, easily topping off that next Fear card in a solo player game, but even in a co-op provides inexorable movement towards the next Terror level. Also note that this power has a range of 0 in a land with invaders, so if you want to keep generating fear with Night Terrors, you'll need to keep yourself resting in the middle of the enemy. For our unique powers, Call on Midnight's Dream offers us a chance at a major power if played in a land with Dahan, gaining energy equal to the number of Dahan and letting us play it immediately if we forget this power. Alternatively, if invaders are present, we can generate 2 fear. This may come in handy early on, in conjunction with Dread Apparitions to successfully defend a land, or to top off the fear pool to gain its benefit, one you may already know about thanks to Spirits May Yet Dream. Dreams of the Dahan allows us to gather up to 2 Dahan into any land at a range of 2, or generates up to 3 fear if both Dahan and invaders are present. With any Dahan movement power, there's a bit of variety in how this can be executed. Typically, we'll use the first aspect in one of 2 ways. Either set up a good counterattack, or maneuver them into position with buildings to keep hitting that land for fear in future turns. We can also use this in combination with Call on Midnight's Dreams to set up bigger energy gains. Dread Apparitions sets up a cascade effect, defending a land for as much fear as you can extract from it. Useful if you've got some Dahan in place to counterattack, or just to mitigate incoming damage. Predatory Nightmares requires a Sacred Site, but deals enough damage to take out a town, and lets you push a couple Dahan. This is a good power turn 1, as it lets us mitigate that first build. Beyond that, its usefulness declines as we're likely able to do much more damage from gaining major powers. And with that, let's proceed to the demo game. As mentioned earlier, we'll be focusing on a strategy that gets some major powers early on to dominate the board with massive amounts of fear. To keep our decisions simplified, and in order to highlight a general progression for this spirit, I'll just be running the base game without any expansions. Alright, let's begin. Turn 1. The initial explorer goes into the jungles. First thing to consider is where we would like to snuggle up to the invaders. Because we end up pushing non-cities around, I like to choose a land with a city because I know they're more likely to stick around. Land 2 gives us access to more of the board, so we'll place our presence there using the last growth option, and possibly move into land 8 next turn if we're able to defend it. The lower jungles will take too much effort to protect, so we'll just ignore that and let the Dahan take care of the town next turn. Our plays will be Predatory Nightmares to generate fear from the high jungle town, and Dreams of the Dahan probably to go into that same jungle. I say probably because we also have Spirits May Yet Dream, giving us some information for what's to come. In the same way that you generally want to pick your powers before making further choices, you'll want to take a look at one of the fear cards coming up. In the case of Night Terrors or some other effect that won't change regardless of what happens on the board, we can use those whenever. Spirits May Yet Dream reveals Isolation, removing a solo non-city invader. This game, it will help us next turn to negate a build, but in other scenarios, we might have been able to stop a build now by using Dreams of the Dahan to generate enough fear this turn to earn that card. Because we don't have the option, we'll keep this knowledge in mind and move the Dahan into the upper jungle before proceeding to the invader phase. After building in the jungles, the invaders venture out into the sands. On the slow phase, we'll induce Predatory Nightmares in Land 8 and deal the damage to the town, pushing it into the mountain. Some fear cards can deal damage or remove invaders in a land with Dahan, so this improves our chances for something to occur in the future. Remembering that we have isolation coming, we also will have the possibility of removing this town instead. Turn 2. With Dread Apparitions and a presence in the higher jungle, we can defend that land, so let's start there, grabbing additional energy and continuing to remove presence from the top track. We could also choose to gain a power here instead, because we can still place presence where we need to. I'm choosing to bank a little extra energy in case we pull a more expensive major power with Call on Midnight's Dreams. Playing what we have left, we proceed. Spirits May Yet Dream will offer another glimpse at the fear deck. Off it, I'll try to gauge how much fear I'm likely to generate, and only reveal one card per set, to distribute information across multiple turns. There's also something to be said for maximizing information on a single turn. Because this will depend on what major power we play this turn, and there's no way to be sure, either of the next two cards in line will be fine. This time, we'll also be able to remove a non-city from a land with a sacred site. With this knowledge, we'll continue our plan to defend the upper jungle with Dread Apparitions and Night Terrors, before also tagging that land with Calling on Midnight's Dreams, choosing to gain a major power. With this strategy, we will typically look for max fear output for our situation, keeping in mind that destroying cities generates 5 fear and destroyed towns generates 2 fear. Elements are less of a concern, though if we draft enough moons, Spirits May Yet Dream allows us an additional element to potentially hit a higher threshold. Here, the Jungle Hungers offers a moon and destroys all non-city invaders and all Dahan in a land close to one of our jungles. Our only jungle will soon be cleared, and there's only a town close by, generating only 2 fear this turn, and we'll need some additional setup to get further value. Indomitable Claim is an excellent defense card, but only generates fear with elements that will be too difficult for us to attain, so we pass. Accelerated Rot generates some initial fear and deals 4 damage on top of that. We have to choose a jungle or wetland up to 2 away, and there happens to be a city established on the coastal wetland. Power Storm can target any spirit, giving them 3 energy and allowing them to repeat a power card, more if you reach the threshold. While there could be a couple of reasons to pick this card if it showed up later, the primary reason we don't want this now is because we don't have a card worth repeating yet. Dreams of the Dahan comes the closest, potentially generating 6 fear if we're set up right. For this game, Accelerated Rot is the obvious choice, choosing to forget Call on Midnight's Dreams to play it immediately. We only earned Isolation this time, but because we know the next fear card allows us to remove the town that will be in our sacred site, we'll remove the Explorer in the Blighted Sands. During the Ravage, the Dahan take care of the town in the lower jungle after the invaders blight it, and we've got the upper jungle defended, letting the Dahan clear the invaders there. After building in our sands, the invaders explore further into the mountains. On the slow phase, Accelerated Rot will trigger Terror level 2 and grant us 2 extra fear cards on top of the one we earned during the Ravage. Turn 3. With no cards in hand, we reclaim and look for another major power. We know that one of our earned fear cards will resolve the sands for us, and there's a good possibility that the higher mountains will be taken care of with one or both of the remaining fear cards. Our power choices are mostly Dahan-centric this time, and combined with our own dreams of the Dahan power, any of these are up for consideration. I'll dismiss Entwined Power as it would take too long to set up with the unknown powers we'd be gaining. Of the 3 remaining, the Trees and Stones Speak of War is the most useful to us, as it not only generates extra fear from destroyed buildings, like Vigor of the Breaking Dawn, but also adds defense, like Rapid Wings of Sunlight. Because Bringer won't actually remove the buildings it destroys, the Trees and Stones allows us to generate fear twice from the same source, making this a really excellent choice. Let's forget Predatory Nightmares, as our new power has an equivalent cost, but is also fast and has a lot more fear output. Looking at our board, we can see a potential city in the mountains and a couple Dahan nearby. With Dreams of the Dahan, we can set up those Dahan into the mountains, and because we don't need Trees and Stones this turn, we are free to terrorize the coastal wetland again with Accelerated Rot. Night Terrors will also add to the fear count before we find out our fear effects. Fear of the Unseen clears our sands. Trade Suffers has no effect this game. And Belief Takes Root gains us an energy. So, nothing to take care of the mountains, but that also works to our advantage. After building in the mountains, the invaders explore into the jungles. Accelerated Rot triggers Terror level 3 before we continue on. Turn 4. We're pretty well set up at the moment, with a plan to generate lots of fear this turn. Because the Trees and Stones cost only 2 energy, we could reach for another major power if we wanted, or if none of our other major powers had worked out for us. But here, let's reclaim Dreams of the Dahan as a cheaper option for gaining extra fear. Still pulling our presence from the top, we'll have to place it at range 0, so a new sacred site on the coast seems good. Playing the cards we discussed, we'll now put them into action. Spirits May Hit Dream can reveal any of the cards earned, other than the last one, because revealing that means you just win. The rest of our powers are used to generate fear, and we'll see 4 cards resolved this turn. Dahan and Heartened can be used to clear out the coastal mountains by gathering a couple of Dahan there. And Scapegoats will actually end this game when the mountain city destroys its town. So only 2 cards resolved before the invaders find the island too frightening to remain. Some final thoughts on Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares. There's a fine line between mitigating incoming invaders and letting them establish in order to hit them harder for a higher fear count. One city is usually sufficient because they aren't pushed when they would be destroyed, and you can remain there to use Night Terrors if everything else has been cleared up. While in solo play, your fear cards will be quite high, and you can easily rely on them to help you through a number of situations. You will not be able to accrue as many cards when playing with allies. Once you get into the 3+ player range, you'll typically want at least one other spirit to supplement your fear output to consistently reveal at least 1 fear card per turn. Having awareness of the fear deck will be helpful in determining certain actions. Knowing, for example, that a pair of Dahan can remove cities at Terror level 3, or being able to remove a number of health worth of invaders from one of your lands, is useful in maximizing your chances to minimize the invader's impact, or just simply ending the game. Alright everyone, that's all I've got this time. Hope you gained some insight, and good luck in your next games.